Hello and welcome to the United Mates Football Podcast. My name is Joe, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Keitel. And we've also got a special guest for you too. Today, we're going to be doing a match recap of the Sheffield United versus Tottenham Hotspur match, a match that I obviously enjoyed, as did my guest. So a big welcome to the show, or welcome back, I should say, to Abbi Grace Summers. Abbi is the presenter of the Run of Play football podcast, and also, appeared on United Mates, or what was then Blazers for Goalpost, back in the summer when we did a North London derby special. So, Abbi, how are you? Welcome back.
I'm good. Thanks for having me back on, guys. Nice to see you both. And I'm good. I'm happy. Can't complain when you've finished your weekend with 3 points and attacking football, might I add. So I'm in a good mood.
Fantastic.
I was chatting with these guys before and was mentioning that having to wake up kind of early to catch the Spurs game this morning, which, as you mentioned, was quite entertaining with some attacking football on display. But yeah, it's lovely to have you back with us, Abbi. And I can't remember if we whipped out an icebreaker the last time you were on the podcast, but we typically like to kick things off with an icebreaker. So given that I noticed you recently guested on the Cheese Room podcast, today's icebreaker for all of us is going to be our favorite cheese-related food item. So I'll get the ball rolling, and I'll give you a sweet option and a savory option, but you don't have to be that diverse necessarily. So for dessert, I'd like a bit of a cheesecake. And living out here in LA, we're quite close to Mexico, so we get a good amount of Central American food. So I'm going to go for a quesadilla. So Abbi, what would your favorite cheese-related dish be?
I love a cheesecake as well. I love a cheesecake. So, but I like cheese in general. It's quite possibly my favorite thing. So, I mean, mozzarella dippers, I could literally live off of those. Probably be my favorite. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, out here, mozzarella sticks with some like marinara sauce to dip them in it's a winning combo. Joe, definitely. What about you?
Yeah, no, I love all things cheese. Sadly, I don't think the cheese room at Spurs ever became a reality, though. But I wish it did. But if I'm having a nice cheese board, you can't go wrong with a nice brie. I think I'll just.
A nice bit of brie and crackers. Yes,
absolutely love it. So there we go. Those are our favourite cheese-related items. But let's talk about Tottenham Hotspur, and I'm very happy that we're going to be talking about a Tottenham Hotspur victory against, albeit Sheffield United. But let's take it back to the starting lineups. And I guess it was a bit of a surprise in a way that we went for 3 at the back. Joe Rodon came in for Moussa Sissoko, and we had Bergwijn playing as well. And who was the other person that dropped out, actually? I'm trying to think.
We had Ben Davies come in.
Davies as well. Yeah, there was plenty, wasn't there?
Yeah, we had quite a few changes of personnel, but I think it kind of worked in our favour. Obviously, I think with us, if we actually play attacking football, which is our strength, I think that we tend to play a lot better. And I quite like the changes. I think it's one of those things where obviously it depends on the game, tactically, of course. But I quite like. I don't mind Davis playing at centre back. I don't mind him, and if Reguilón's being pushed further up, he knows that left back role he has to fill in for. So he can do that as well as play centre back. He can provide the cover needed. And I think he's always looked pretty solid when he's played at the back for us.
No, I agree, and I think today it really it gave Reguilón that license to really drive forward. And in the first half, in particular, he was all over Sheffield United. But when you first saw that team, because I saw on Twitter before the game, obviously always scrolling through, a lot of people seemingly were quite negative about it, going, we're going with a back 5 against Sheffield United. What when you sort of first saw that team sheet, did you see it more that way, or did you see it more as an opportunity for Aurier and Reguilón to have that kind of license to just drive forward in those wing-back roles?
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to just sit back against Sheffield. I didn't think it was negative at all. I thought it was actually a very positive move. And when you've got fullbacks that have got the pace that we've got and that can get crosses in the box, like Reguilón has shown he can, I think that was exactly what he was trying to do. My only critique would have been the Dele situation, and there's a lot of discussion over in the fan base about Dele. Should he stay? Should he go? Should he loan? And there's a bit of a split thing whether or not this is Mourinho being Mourinho, or whether or not Dele really has come to the end of his time. And I think that's what was maybe winding people up a little bit, seeing Jedson on the bench instead of him. But look, I think that we just have to put the situation with Dele to bed and to one side, because we can blame Mourinho, and I actually don't think it's Mourinho's fault. I think he gave Dele an opportunity. When he first came in and he said, are you Dele's brother? And I think, like he said openly, and Ndombele is a perfect example. So we all know that he was not in favour of him. It looked very much like he was heading for the door. And then he said, if you want to be here, you have to fight for it. And I don't have an issue with that style of tactic from a manager on a player. I think it's actually quite good, because you only want players there that are going to put 100% in and work for the team. And I think that with Dele, he's given him that opportunity, and he hasn't obviously seen what he wants to see. But if you go back to while Pochettino was still there, Dele still wasn't the Dele that we all knew and had come accustomed to, back in 2018. In the last, 2 years, he has fallen off. And I would have liked to see him go on loan. Maybe he still will go on loan, and maybe he'll come back and there'll be a resurgence. But I think that as a shame as it is for all of us, and I did feel it too, I was upset to not see Dele involved. I think we just have to, it's unfortunate, but he's just got to move on. I think it's obviously best for everyone if we just kind of part ways and, get some fresh blood to fill that gap.
I definitely agree with you, but I was very upset not to see him on the bench. And I think, just like a lot of Spurs fans, given how well he's done for us, like you said, the last few years he hasn't, but overall he's always contributed, and we know he's got that star quality. It's sad to see it end this way. But yeah, before we sort of dive into the first half, Kai, what do you think about this whole Dele Alli situation at Spurs? Are you happy at the thought of him moving on from Spurs, or do you think that he's not the man he once was? Well, the boy, I guess, back in those early days, He was very young.
That's a good point, because he's still quite young. So I think definitely there's something wrong, because we've all seen the talent that he possesses, and he hasn't been able to showcase that, or whether or not he's been showcasing it on the training ground, we haven't seen it, because he hasn't been getting the game time on the pitch. I think he needs a fresh start, whether it's a permanent move or a loan. He needs something, or a run of games, but it doesn't look like he's going to get that. So inevitably, you'd think, I guess, as a Spurs fan, you'd probably be wanting a loan move, because Dele's a brilliant player, and if he can come back and be the guy that he was once upon a time, that's only going to be an asset. Again, I guess from an England fan's perspective as well, likewise, going into this Euro tournament, he might be able to, I don't know. I think it's in his best interest to get football sooner rather than later, especially with the Euros. So I, jokingly, when we had, who are we chatting to? Frankie Hobbs mentioned that I would take Arsenal, and you kind of like laugh me off the call, but I stand by that. I think he's a Premier League quality player, a top half quality player, even in the form that he's in right now. You look at someone like Emile Smith-Rowe, who has barely any minutes in the Premier League, but just by virtue of the fact that he is a attacking midfield player, there aren't that many attacking midfield players that play that position naturally. James Maddison would be a good example. Jack Grealish, otherwise Kevin De Bruyne, sort of. He can even play a bit deeper. There aren't that many attacking midfielders, and I would call Dele an attacking midfielder. So I think that, given the lack of those types of players in the Premier League, I think he's a massive asset. Hopefully he'll find the right club, and he'll start performing again. But I guess you mentioned the goals, and you mentioned earlier players who've kind of, like Dele Alli, needing to turn things around. I guess Serge Aurier would be someone who has turned things around, and he popped up with the first goal. Given that you signed Matt Doherty at the beginning of the season, it wasn't clear whether or not Aurier was going to be the guy, and he's kind of fought his way back into the team recently, and obviously popped up with the opener today. What did you make, Abby, I guess, of the nature of that first goal, given that Sheffield United are quite a physical side, and that you were able to open the scoring today from a corner?
I think for us, it was always going to be about getting the first goal, which a lot of the time it has been for us. We do tend to score, quite early on in games. But I think with Sheffield coming off their win, to get that early goal kind of set the tone for the day. Because I think that if we would have let it go on and drag on, they would have probably built a little bit more confidence as the game went on. So it was really important for us. And like you said, with Serge Aurier, he's been a bit of a revelation. I mean, look, he's still got the odd mistake in him, as do some of our players. Davinson Sanchez also springs to mind. But when you think that you brought in McGoldrick to be the number one, essentially, and actually it's completely flipped the switch, and he's now our number two choice, and Aurier starts over him. I think that's also credit to the player, because again, no one was team Aurier, and I don't believe anybody that sits here and says that they were beforehand, because he got pelters every single time he played, and it'd be such a small minority of people that always said, oh no, I always loved Aurier. Bollocks, no they didn't. So I think that credit where it's due. He's, come on so much under Mourinho, and it just shows you. No one's saying that. Just back to Dele. No one's saying that Dele isn't a great player. He is, but I think that it really depends how hard you're willing to work and how much effort you're going to put in. You want your players to run through brick walls for you, and I think that's kind of the message that Jose was trying to send to him. And maybe it just hasn't been enough in his eyes, and maybe just the course has run with him being at Tottenham.
Maybe Joe, I'll let you jump into the second goal. But speaking of players who kind of would run through a brick wall, Højbjerg was the guy who broke up the Sheffield United attack and set, I think, Harry Kane eventually on his way. Were you quite impressed with how Spurs were able to soak up pressure after they scored the first goal and then compound Sheffield United's sort of misery with the second goal?
Yeah, no, I was. I think it was a really good first half for Spurs. And just before getting into that, I mean, Son had that chance quite soon after we went 1-0 up, where normally you'd expect him to bury it. And it was quite a good dink by him, but he just didn't quite get his angles right. And you could see how frustrated he was. But yeah, you could see from very early on that we meant business today. And then, once we get the first goal, we've been there before, we've been 1-0 up, and it's all gone horribly wrong. So we knew that getting that second goal, especially against a team like Sheffield United, really should be the killer blow. And eventually, like you said, Højbjerg breaks up the play, Kane gets it, who'd actually been a bit rusty, I thought, up until that point. But then he gets the ball, he turns, and it's a fantastic finish. And I think it's easy to say now, but at that point, going 2-0 up against Sheffield United, you're feeling pretty confident. I mean, Abbi, obviously it was a fantastic finish by Harry Kane. What had you made of his first half performance up until that finish?
I don't like to criticize Harry Kane because I think Harry Kane is so he's so much more than just a striker. He is everything. His work rate is just unbelievable. He tracks back, he defends, he is in midfield, he's absolutely everywhere. So okay, yeah, he can have a few quiet games, and I just don't ever. I personally hate calling out Harry Kane because I think that we have got someone that is the best striker. For me, he's the best striker in Europe by a mile. I absolutely adore him. I love the way he plays. He's so deadly in front of goal, and he's a team player. He works so hard for the team. Not many strikers can do what he does for that and have the impact he does across the team, not just in front of goal. So he might have been a little bit quiet, but you give him the ball in the right area, it's a deadly finish. It's bread and butter. It's on a plate. It's literally on a plate for him. It's that type of Harry Kane goal you love to see. We've seen it time and time again. And just to touch on Højbjerg, honestly, what a signing! Because when he signed from Southampton, I remember speaking to Matt Letizia on a project I was doing, and he said, "Oh, he's a bit average. I don't think he's going to really improve Tottenham." And obviously he's a Southampton fan. He's seen him week in, week out. And my God, he's been signing of the season by a mile. I mean, what a player! He is just everything we didn't know we needed, and that we were missing, that we just 100% needed. And I love him. Wow, what a player!
No, he's everything I hoped and more. I mean, yeah, I had sort of highish hopes, but I didn't think he'd become quite this influential at this stage, and he's already a leader. I mean, he sort of feels like the captain in a way before he is. He's got that real presence about him.
But that's what you want. You want a player. And do you know what? I love Harry Winks as well, and I know he really does split our fan base completely down the middle. I love Harry Winks for the fact that he loves Tottenham, and I love having someone in that side that is like Tottenham through and through, that would put his body on the line every single time. He feels it in his heart when you lose games. I love that. And I feel like Højbjerg is that type of a guy. I feel like he's so passionate about the team he's playing for. He just would do anything. A brick wall. Yeah, he gets it. He's a brick wall player, and I like brick wall players.
He's like Granit Xhaka, but in like an alternate universe where he actually channels his passion into like an appropriate place, and he's a good footballer. Yeah, because what's interesting about Højbjerg is you look at his technique and his engine, and I wouldn't put him in like necessarily the top one for any of his physical or technical attributes, but it's his mental strength and the way that he reads the game and his willingness to die for the cause that essentially makes him an invaluable player so far this season for Tottenham. Alongside Tanguy Ndombele today, that was a perfect kind of balance in the midfield, along with the formation that you guys played. And obviously Ndombele went on to score quite a brilliant goal. Although am I getting ahead of myself? Because Sheffield United would get back to 2-1, wouldn't they?
You're allowed to get ahead of yourself. But yeah.
Well, I think maybe we'll save that for a bit later because we'll
Yeah.
approach it in order. But it was a brilliant goal, and we will get to it. But obviously, what was it in the early second half?
Yeah, so half-time 2-0. I think everyone's pretty happy. We start the second half. There's always, I guess, with a Mourinho side, you're probably going to sit back a little bit. But then given how well the first half has gone, you're thinking, are we going to push on, maybe score a few more goals? And I actually don't think we started the second half that badly. We definitely dropped back a bit. But then, obviously the cross comes in. I think John Fleck delivers a really good cross. And yet again, we concede from a cross. So, McGoldrick pops up with a header. At that point, Abby, are you getting worried, or what are your thoughts at that moment? Because it's clearly a really nervy moment for Spurs fans when anything like that happens.
Oh, well, just with our track record lately, I just was sitting there going, oh, no. And then, but you know what? I think what the massive help was having that 2-goal lead, because if that's 1-1, I don't know how that game would have ended. Honestly, I really don't. I just don't know how that would have ended. But having that second goal, for our advantage was massive for us, because it still meant we had that bit of cushion where we could go forward. But it just shows you that the difference between playing attacking football and inviting it on, and inviting the pressure on. Don't invite the pressure on, because there's just no need. Especially, and we should never have done it against Fulham, and it still winds me up. 5-6 days later that we allowed that to happen against Fulham at home. And all credit to Fulham. Fulham played very well, but at the end of the day, you're Tottenham Hotspur, and we're supposed to beat Tottenham Hotspur. We're supposed to be challenging. We were in a title race not too long ago. And it just seems to me that every time there's an opportunity for us to, close the gap at the top or go top or within a point, we just seem to bottle it. And it really, really winds me up, because it's been a recurring thing for years on years on years whenever we've been in that situation. But today, when they got one back, it did get a little bit nervy, but then all of a sudden there was that little bit of brilliance. And then it was all plain sailing from there, really.
Oh yeah, I still haven't got over that goal.
What a goal!
Wow,
Such a baller.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Tanguy Ndombele, because obviously he's just gone and scored a goal that could end up being goal of the season. It was that good, but he obviously had a tough start to life at Spurs. It looked like he was out the door. He's come back in the team this season. He's looked really good, and now in the last few games his fitness looks like it's improved. He looks like he's even more confident than he was before, and then he does that. I mean, how good is Tanguy Ndombele, Abby? Is he one of the best in the league? What can we say about him? He's just incredible.
He's great. He's got the potential to be phenomenal, and he's already on the right tracks. And I remember listening to Mourinho saying about why he always took him off at 60 minutes and then 70 minutes and whatever. And it was to do with obviously the stamina throughout the game and having that, because we know he did look a little bit chunky last season. He obviously wasn't quite up to the fitness levels he needed to be, and he's worked hard. Credit to him. Credit to Mourinho as well for sticking with it, giving each other a new slate. And I mean, what a player. It would have just been the biggest travesty if he would have gone. And I remember sitting on so many podcasts at the back end of our season saying he cannot leave. He has got so much talent in him. There is something so special in him that you cannot allow him to go elsewhere, because it'll be like a De Bruyne situation for Chelsea. He'll come and bite you in the arse if you let him go. And I'm just really happy he's stuck about, because we have such a player on our hands. And when we are allowed to play attacking football, you just see what quality he has, whether it's in front of goal or picking passes, looking. He's one of those players that has the potential, like De Bruyne, to see things that you can't see. So the more that he plays in that higher up the pitch position, the more he can get forward. I think the more we'd see that type of football from Ndombele.
He's got that knack as well. Whenever he gets the balls, he just finds a way to get past people, and he's got that strength where I don't think I've ever seen him.
He's a bit like Moussa Dembele, but with a more attacking flair. And imagine if they would have played in the same team. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it would have been a lot of fun. Yeah, Moussa Dembele, attacking flair, and an N and an O instead of an E, I guess. Kai, what do you, as an Arsenal fan, I'm sure, seeing Ndombele score that goal, you're not going to be getting too excited. But do you see him as one of our best players now? How do you rate the guy?
I rate him very highly. It's not going to be until he maybe finishes the season with this type of form that you can, I guess, feel too confident in backing up like this high praise, because it is, I wouldn't call it a flash in the pan, because it's obvious the guy has talent and he was doing it in France before. But I think, from a third party perspective, if I'm going to take my Arsenal hat off, like, you'd like to see him kind of extend this form for 10, 20 games. But essentially, just on a pure talent level, I think he's up there with De Bruyne, as Abby was saying. I think he's kind of what probably a lot of United fans hope that Paul Pogba would be on occasion, in terms of how positive his play is and how powerful he is. I think it was kind of a bit of unusual for me to see him today get on the end of the ball over the top by Bergwijn, I think it was. From what I've seen of Ndombele, he tends to start play more than kind of follow up on it. So I thought it was quite cool to see him chase the ball over the top. And obviously the finish itself was quite spectacular. You couldn't really tell if it was going to go in for a second, and then it hits the post and Ramsdale still tries to like claw behind him and fish it out. But it reminded me almost, it was a very similar feeling that I got from the goal, of seeing like, wow, that's pretty special. But it was a different finish to Bale against Stoke many years ago.
With the high leg.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
the high leg. Yeah.
It's kind of just that moment where you're like, oh, that was a bit special. You don't really see that every day. So I mean, he's capable of the sublime. And Ndombele, like I said, I'd like to see him stay consistent, but it looks like you guys have a real star on your hand, despite it taking him like a year to sort of get his ass in gear. He's bought into the Mourinho kind of mentality. And I think that everything I mentioned that Højbjerg isn't, I think Ndombele is, in terms of having the technique, having the power. So they're a perfect partnership. I just think the only thing I was thinking today was, and I don't know if he's injured, I didn't look at the bench, but what's up with Lo Celso?
Yeah, he's still out injured. He had I think it was a thigh injury. I think he picked it up at, was it Stoke? Or
yeah, he's always getting knocks, isn't he? Probably, yeah. That sounds about right. And then
he's been out for quite some time. He's been out since before Christmas. I'm pretty sure that it was a thigh injury or a hamstring, but it was a while ago. I think it was Stoke. He's picked it up from, but he should. I would expect him to be back within probably the next 3 weeks or so.
Right, but then he'll just be out again for like another month or two. The guy's made of glass. Like, has he strung more than 10 games together since he joined?
I don't know. But the thing is, now I reckon he's going to find it hard to get back in the team the way Tanguy's playing. But speaking about the assist, it was Steven Bergwijn who made the assist. And he's had an interesting time of late. He obviously, in that game against Liverpool, he missed the big chance. He hit the post. He had the other miss. He got quite a lot of flack online, as you do, given that we ended up going on to lose. And whilst he clearly has bought into the Mourinho methods, he puts in a shift every game. His confidence is seemingly lacking from an attacking perspective in terms of grabbing the goals for himself. What do you think about Bergwijn, Abby? Do you sort of rate the fact that he's willing to put a shift in, or do you think we need to demand more from him in that final third as well? I mean, maybe I'm being a bit harsh. He did get that assist, but I often feel at the moment when he gets into the box and he just seems a bit nervous. What do you think?
Well, look, he was brought in as an attacking player, but he's being used predominantly as a defensive player. And that is purely down to, obviously, the manager and the tactics he likes to play. We know that he likes to play him or Lucas Moura purely for the fact that they will track back. I'm a strong believer that's why he doesn't play Bale or Vinicius in a front three. Similarly with Lamela, even though I do find Lamela does track back when he does play. Again, another one made of glass. But yeah, he looked really bright when he signed in front of goal. And obviously, we haven't really seen him be bright at all in front of goal. I mean, I think the last one I can think of was obviously against United.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
And against Liverpool, look, he got a lot of flack, and I think our fans were bang out of order because for the misses that he missed, what he made up for. Sorry, my battery just went. For the misses that he missed, what he makes up for it defensively. And anyone that can do that job and track back as much as he does, when it's not his natural position, he's not a defensive player, but to come into the side and do that, you have to give the player credit. He's doing the job that he's been handed, and yet he actually does it very well as that extra man in midfield. However, the ones he missed, it is disappointing because if they fall to Son or if they fall to Kane, it's a different story. And that's where I feel like with Tottenham, we've got that little bit of an issue that it's the reliance of Kane and Son, but also I would like to see us attack more, because our biggest asset is our attack. You look at the bench, you've got Bale, you've got Vinicius, you've got, yes, Lucas doesn't pass to a white shirt, but still, you've got Bergwijn, you've got Lamela, you've got Lo Celso, you've got attacking players. And I would just like to see us utilise that more. And there are games when you don't have to utilise it. No issue with the City game, no issue with the Chelsea game, no issue with Arsenal. My issue is Palace. My issue is Wolves. My issue is Fulham. That's where my problem is, about not utilising what we've got, and making negative substitutions. Why, today, I think, probably Kane could have come off at 65, 70 minutes, bring Vinicius on, bring Bale on. I think that's the whole point. Was he begged Daniel Levy to give him attacking options, begged him for another striker. So utilise what you have. Don't just wait for the Europa League to come about, because how do you expect this poor guy who's come here from Benfica, he's 25 years old, he obviously can score a goal, but let him have some game time in the Premier League. How are you ever going to know if Gareth Bale is, capable of recovering any type of form if you don't play him? We're just paying someone's wages to sit there on the bench, which he was doing at Madrid. So we might as well see if there's anything that can help us as the season goes on, rather than just have this outright reliance on Kane and Son the whole time, and mix it up, see what they are about, because they obviously can get goals. I fail to believe that Gareth Bale can't come on and contribute into a game against Fulham. No, I just can't foresee that wouldn't help the team.
Yeah, it does seem odd. I mean, there was some weird clip that got leaked, which who knows if it's true, where you sort of hear Mourinho in the training ground go, do you want to go back to Madrid and sit on the bench? So, there's all murmurs and maybe there's some discontentment. But no, you have to hope that Bale gets a bit more time. But one final question I have is, given that Bergwijn sort of playing well but not really scoring, Lucas, like you said, it doesn't quite work, Lamela, again, he's a squad player, would you take Eriksen back on loan and slot him in there ahead of those guys? Given that Dele, seemingly it's all over for him at Spurs in the short term, would you take Eriksen back?
Yes, I would take Eriksen back. I'd like an apology from Christian Eriksen. Yeah. On behalf of all of us, I'd like an apology. No, look, you cannot deny that Christian Eriksen has bags and bags of talent. Okay, and look, the last year and a half when he was at Spurs was a bit sour. It didn't end great. And that was purely down to the player, but he's still contributed. There is still many a time, in that last year and a half, he's come up with the goods, and we don't have a midfield scoring player. Obviously we saw today with Ndombele, but it happens very rarely that someone else contributes. And would I bring Eriksen back till the end of the season? 100%. I think it's an area that we haven't got. I think it's an area we'd like Lo Celso to be and fill the boots of, but I don't think that he is as attack-minded as Eriksen. I don't think he can pick the pass quite as well. I think he's more defensive in that role. So yes, I'd take him back. I think it could be a piece of the puzzle that could really help us get over the line, with everything being so tight in that league. We've gone from being in a title race to being 8th to back being in the top 4, and United have just come out of absolutely nowhere, and I don't think anybody can understand how United at the top of the league. It's just bizarre. And I think that any team that had Christian Eriksen it had Eriksen playing in it would benefit. You can't not. But I don't want to hear him be called a free kick specialist, because he's not a free kick specialist.
Yeah, he's definitely not a corner taker either. That was always
no. I mean, I'm much happier seeing Sonny take corners. He does take quite a decent corner, actually. But I guess we didn't have much to compare it to, because the others were so poor.
Kai, we previously had discovered about a month ago, it was Eriksen was being linked with Arsenal at the time. Would you be annoyed if he ends up back at Spurs? Do you want him still? I mean, it sounds like if he's going anywhere, it's probably Spurs now. Yeah, what do you think? From Spurs' perspective, we should be pursuing this sort of loan deal?
He hasn't been, the player that we're all really talking about for quite some time now. So I'm not too worried about it. I was sad to see him go to Spurs the first time, because I think the player that left Ajax was a player who could have, because obviously he did want to use Spurs as a stepping stone. I do think that Eriksen did within himself at a certain point in his career have the potential to play for Real Madrid or somewhere like that. I think that moment's gone, and I think that you could take him or leave him. You might as well put Dele in the team. That's how I feel about Eriksen. If you're going to bring him back, especially from the financial outlay, why would you spend that money on wages? In that, if you're going to get Dele out, then if you're going to do a 1 in 1 out, sure. If Dele's going to rot on the bench, why would you bring Eriksen in?
I think that's probably what I could see happening. Dele maybe going off to hang out with Poch at PSG, and then Eriksen comes home. But
But I think Dele would fit in at PSG. I think, I'll be honest. I watched the game last night. I watched the PSG on Jersey game, and honestly, it's not even a comparison to the Premier League in terms of quality. PSG should be walking that league every single season. They should be winning every cup. It shouldn't even be a debate. When you look at the other teams, the quality is so much less than the Premier League. And I'm not saying that's anything to do with Dele, but I think that him to go there and get the confidence he needs, I think it's a really good move for him. And to be with a manager who he trusts and trusts him, I think it's, a winning combination for both of them. And in terms of, comparing him to Eriksen, I would have preferred to have Eriksen in my side, because I've seen, even when Eriksen is performing at 50%, I still think that he can change a game. Whereas I've seen Dele perform at 50% and he doesn't change a game in recent years. So having Eriksen back, I think it's a good thing to have him in that midfield. The way that he always linked up with Kane and Son, it really can't be a bad thing if Tottenham take him back for 6 months.
I guess before maybe we wrap up, I wanted to pick out one positive. I want to say one nice thing about Spurs that I noticed from today, and then I want to say one not so nice thing that I noticed about Spurs from today. I'll start with the nice thing, being that I thought Joe Rodon was brilliant. I am not sure why commentators persist in calling him Rodon, like he's like he's like a transformer or something like that. But anyway, I think Joe Rodon's quality, and I think that if anything, he's putting my dog, excuse me. He's very passionate about Joe Rodon, my dog, you see. I was going to say he's making, Sanchez look like Mustafi, just like you spent so much money on him, he's just chilling on the bench. But yeah, Rodon's come in and he's doing the business. So Rodon would be my one nice thing. Otherwise, I love Son. He's a brilliant player. He's one of the best players in the league, but he is a diver and he can't help himself. And I noticed on 2 occasions in that game, him go down, one off the ball where he just bumped into a Sheffield United player. And then the other when Ramsdale kind of made a mess of sweeping up, like Son was running onto a through ball. And then I think you can probably remember it was either at the beginning of the second half or the end of the first half. And Son just like leaves a leg dangling and just tries to dive. Like it's so blatant. Does that bother you? I'm not saying that players at Arsenal don't dive, but come on, like between Kane like breaking people's backs and and Son, or am I just sour grapes over here?
I think a bit. Because,
it's sour grapes. The Kane thing. I mean, after you sound like a Liverpool fan, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, all teams have players that go down a bit. It's part of modern football now, and I'm sure if we go back to a few Arsenal teams from the past to present, this happens. But it is what it is.
Well, what about
you're spot on about Joe Rodon. Joe Rodon is, I think he's been fantastic. And in terms of Sanchez, I think Sanchez has always just been filling a hole. I don't think any manager was completely sold on him. I think there's been times where you think he's progressing, and there are games you can use him in because he is capable at times of playing that high line. But I think that you always think that there is a mistake in him, unfortunately. And I think Rodon is a perfect example of a defender's defender who loves to defend and, wants to get down and dirty with all that. And I think that I think he'll be a really good signing for us. From what I've seen so far, I think it's great.
Yeah, I do rate Joe Rodon. But yeah, I was just going to say, I guess on Sheffield United, last season they were brilliant. This season they are anything but brilliant. What is the difference between the Sheffield United of last season and the Sheffield United of this season? I'll just throw that out there. Like, obviously, I reckon you probably would have gotten a more difficult game at Bramall Lane last season. Yeah, what's gone wrong for Chris Wilder and Sheffield United?
Yeah, I mean, we lost to them 3-1 last year after the lockdown, so they weren't doing well at the time. They clearly had a good game then. They've had a few injuries. That Jack O'Connell guy, the defender, he's out. There's that second season syndrome thing, isn't there, where they've maybe been worked out a bit. They have a passionate fan base which aren't going to games anymore. So I just think that, all those things combined haven't really worked out in their favour. And I mean, I'd be incredibly surprised if they don't get relegated now, to be honest.
I think they have to win 10. I think they've got to win 10 now, and I think that it's a very tough ask. But like you said, fans play such a big role in football. And if anything we've learned from this whole coronavirus situation, it's that it's exactly that, and that there is no home advantage anymore. Home and away doesn't count because there's no one there. There's no pressure. There's no 12th man. And we've seen it at Liverpool. Actually, that's another standout one. And so, also at West Ham, where you can actually reverse it, and they've actually benefited from not having their fans there. So it just shows you how much of a role that fans play in football and getting you over the line. Because last season when we went there, I mean, obviously they didn't have fans there then. We had that very controversial VAR decision on Lucas Moura. But when they came to Tottenham in Poch's last game, they should have won that game. There was that very controversial thing as well, but they look like a completely different outfit. And when on the previous podcast I was doing, there was a Sheffield United fan. He was saying, John Lundstrom is going to leave because they can't afford to pay 30 grand wages, and it just shows you the levels of difference in the Premier League. We sit here moaning about paying Gareth Bale's wages 200 grand a week, and they can't even afford to keep one of their star players for 30 grand a week. So just shows you what fans and revenue and stuff like that brings into the side, doesn't it?
Yeah, not looking good for the Blades. I guess at least they had one good season. But yeah, it is what it is. Kai, I think this is probably a good time to wrap things up. So I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, well, cheers, Joe. As always, thanks for being my co-host, and to Abby, thanks for being our guest. We hope that you enjoyed yourself, and I guess to Joe and Abby, I hope you guys can sort of bask in the rest of this weekend and enjoy. Where are you guys in the table now?
We fourth?
Yeah, I think we're fourth.
We're top four, which I'll take. I'll take that.
Top four, and I think the Liverpool United result was a good one too. Obviously, a point each. Yeah, that was in our favour. So I guess not too bad all round for the weekend.
Yeah. If only Arsenal could have. I know you guys won't necessarily join in that.
Certainly not.
Yeah. But anyway,
certainly not.
Abby, I guess, before we do let you go, thanks again, like I was saying, but otherwise, is there a good way for our listeners to follow you and any of your projects going on this new year?
So obviously everything I do is through Twitter. So it's at Abbi_Summers is my handle. As I think you touched on before, Run of Play podcast, which is a general football podcast about football and culture. New episode should be out tomorrow. It's with Chris Coleman and his son Sonny, who's football agent. Yeah, so they were really cool. We had them on the other night, so we're just editing that tonight, and that should be out tomorrow. And also a new thing, so anyone who follows Spurs, you'll know the Spurs web. We're launching a brand new YouTube channel, which should be out Wednesday. First episode, got Graham Roberts on, a nice, easy legend to have on the show. First one, just be talking about Spurs things, current situations, talking about him and his charity work. And it should be out Wednesday. So keep your eyes peeled on my page and the Spurs web for that as well.
Nice, yeah, a lot going on. It's not Sonny and Cher, it's Sonny and Chris, I guess.
Yeah, and do you know what? He's such a cool guy, Chris Coleman. What a great guy. Everyone left the podcast when we were filming, and we were like, "Oh my god, I want to see my dad. He's that cool."
Yeah, if you're out there taking father applications, Chris Coleman, I guess. But as far as our end of things, for Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, you can follow us at United Mates FP to keep track of everything we've got going on. We're doing these match recaps, regular episodes, interviews, writing articles, and plenty more content. So do drop us a follow. Otherwise, on YouTube, you're going to be able to find all of those as well. And that's United Mates Football Podcast. Until next time, everyone, take care of yourselves and take care of each other as well. Goodbye.